This is Leave It to the Experts, a podcast from 360 Info, a public interest journalism initiative based at Monash University in Melbourne, Australia. Over the next 6 episodes, we'll be looking at the Indian election. From the lands of the Kulin Nation, my name is Emma Hoy. It is a grand year for democracy, with over 2 billion people having the chance to vote in elections that will shape their futures. But among all the polls, the sheer scale of India's national election dominates in terms of numbers, logistics and importance to the region.
What does democracy mean in India in 2024?
The world's biggest election, that's in India, where nearly...
It is a mammoth 6-week process to gather everybody's vote.
It's already underway, beginning in mid-April as officials work to capture as many votes as possible until tallying begins at the start of June. It is a long and winding vote that will lead to the coronation of India's next Prime Minister. From Jammu and Kashmir, high up in the Himalayas and bordering China and Pakistan in the north, to Kanyakumari in Tamil Nadu in the south, from Arunachal Pradesh in the east to Gujarat in the west. The Indian people are set to decide who will take charge of the most populous country and fastest growing major economy on earth. Whoever takes the job has the chance to seize the opportunity of an age, to harness the power of 1 billion people and potentially chart the path to take India to superpower status. But in the wrong hands, India risks being left behind in a rapidly changing world. So, what pressures are weighing on one of the world's most intricate and diverse nations as it decides who will become its next leader? Who are the main characters fighting to lead India into its next era? And what will this election mean for the rest of the world? This podcast will attempt to give you, the listener, an idea of the big issues facing Indian voters. We'll be covering a lot of ground, from climate politics to religious freedoms to the role of cricket in the election. But before we take on the world's biggest democratic exercise, let's break down the key players. Here's 360 Info editor Lachlan Guselli on the characters and coalitions trying to chart the path to victory on June 4.
Now, before we discover the main characters of this enormous production, first let's look at some numbers. 968 million eligible voters, that's more than 10% of the population of planet Earth voting in this election. More than 2,500 parties for people to vote for, all staged over 7 different voting phases for the Indian people to have their chance to decide their next Prime Minister. So while those numbers settle in, it's time to introduce the main character. Rightly or wrongly, this election revolves around one man.
Narendra Modi is the reigning superstar of Indian politics.
The most popular Indian politician of the 21st century.
Modi is running for a 3rd term as India's Prime Minister. He's led the country already for the past 10 years. His first election win in 2014 was an electoral earthquake in India.
Narendra Das Modi.
Modi became just the 2nd Prime Minister from his party, the BJP. You'll hear that acronym a lot in the coming weeks. BJP stands for Bharatiya Janata Party. Firmly entrenched on the right wing of the old-fashioned political spectrum, the BJP describes itself as a party of Hindu nationalists. This is one of the sources of the BJP's recent electoral success. Almost 80% of India's more than 1 billion population are Hindu.
Elected for a 2nd term as India's Prime Minister, the head of the Hindu nationalist BJP party basked in the adulation of the crowds.
Modi won again in 2019 owing to widespread infrastructure spending, a more strident posture on international affairs, and the consolidation of the party around one single figure, Narendra Modi. For what it's worth, the cult of personality has been successful. The past decade has been one of electoral dominance, thanks to a man who grew up as the son of a tea seller. This everyman appeal, mixed with a media team willing to paint the picture of a global icon, sees pollsters place Modi as the most well-supported leader in the world, with an approval rate over 70%.
अब हमारी सरकार का
But here's the thing. Despite all of that electoral success, no one party, not even Narendra Modi's BJP, has ever won a majority of the votes in Indian electoral history. That's why you may hear Modi promoting the NDA, the National Democratic Alliance, a coalition group that includes centre-right to extreme-right parties.
भाजपा के नेतृत्व वाली एनडीए सरकार
14 different parties from the NDA hold seats in India's parliament from the 2019 election. Modi needs them to secure his position.
Do you think you're going to win?
100% we are going to win. We are very confident. He is a brand that has entered every house. He is a brand for integrity.
The other major coalition is known as INDIA, or India, standing for the Indian National Developmental Inclusive Alliance. Founded only last year, the coalition group brings 41 different parties to the election, chief among them the Indian National Congress. So before you start thinking that this is an election being fought by the dominance of the BJP over the small coalition of the India Alliance, history is actually entirely in reverse. Congress dominated Indian politics for more than 50 years, since the first post-independence election in 1952. The party was blasted out of power by the BJP in 2014, undone by corruption scandals and a flagging economy.
Narendra Modi had been widely predicted, but what hadn't was the scale of the landslide.
They won just 44 seats, and you may wonder that doesn't sound too bad, say, in Australia, but how does that translate in India? The Indian Parliament is based on the British Westminster system with two chambers, the lower house known as the Lok Sabha and the upper house known as the Rajya Sabha. The Prime Minister sits in the lower house with his Parliament members. The Parliament has 545 members, with party ideologies across the spectrum, from communist to democratic socialist to secular parties. 303 are members of the BJP and just 46 are members of the next largest, the Indian National Congress. So, looking at those numbers, along with the supposed most popular leader in the world fueling the world's fastest growing major economy, how would anyone assume they can beat Narendra Modi and the BJP machine? Well, politics isn't that simple, and despite the fact that many believe Modi will win the election, there are experts who believe this may be the moment when the music stops. Maybe not for the BJP, but potentially for the man who changed electoral politics in India. The country sits at the crossroads of history. What happens next will forge the path it takes.
Politics is messy, and in a country as broad and unique as India, the path to power is never a straight line. Narendra Modi's brand of politics has polarised the Indian people, with the sitting Prime Minister accused of splitting the country along religious lines. But the influence of the main party in the opposition alliance, the Indian National Congress, has shrunk over time and is said by some to be elitist. The Congress has run India for most of the nation's history and is heavily tethered to the dynasty of the Nehru-Gandhi family. 3 members of said family tree have served as Indian Prime Minister in the past 71 years, others as members of the Parliament. Now, the 6th-generation Harvard-educated Rahul Gandhi is one of the faces of the Modi opposition. And the opposition parties are united against Modi this time around. But while the Gandhis and Modi wrestle for top spot, at the other end of the political power rankings are the millions upon millions of Indians struggling to find their place in Modi's new India. Religious tension, unemployment, protests over a looming farm crisis and an economy struggling to transition from agriculture to industry are all swirling issues. Each holds importance over both the domestic and global position of India. So, now that we know everything that's at stake, let's get an update from inside India. To help us do that, one of our wonderful 360 Info team members on the ground will join us from India across the series. This week, we're joined by our South Asia editor, Bharat Bhushan. Bharat, welcome. With India at the crossroads of a really significant moment in its modern history, I wanted to start by asking you to set the scene for us. What are some of the major battleground issues that are shaping the election so far?
At a formal level, you could say the issues are about Modi's guarantees and Congress Party's justice guarantees. At an ideological level, the election issues are between Narendra Modi's majoritarian Hindu ideology and the constitutional secular ideology of the India bloc. They are for a secular, inclusive India, and Modi is for majoritarianism. Then there are issues of price rise, record youth unemployment, which form another plank of the election campaign. The BJP had initially hoped that its construction of a Ram temple at a site in North India where a disputed mosque stood, plus its changing of the citizenship laws to allow migrants from neighboring countries, all except Muslims, into India, would be major election issues. However, they seem to have gone into the background, and the narrative now is all about whether Modi will change the constitution or not. And the origin of this is in Modi's slogan that this time around, people should give him more than 400 seats in a 545-member house. And you require 2/3 majority to change the constitutions.
Right. Bharat, you've just mentioned Narendra Modi and the BJP's internal confidence to get past 400 seats, but also that people are turning against the party. So how is the Prime Minister faring coming into the election?
I would say Modi is weaker than ever before in this election. In the previous election, people were shouting, Modi, Modi, Modi. There was a frenzy about him. That's completely missing in this election. Earlier, he seemed unbeatable and people thought this would be a one-horse race, but that is no longer the case. I would say it's because Modi has not been able to overhaul the Indian economy. Jobless growth is there in the economy. But this means that the 12 million youngsters who are joining the workforce every year have no jobs. Wages are falling, especially in rural areas. There is distress in the agricultural sector. Yet another sign of Modi weakening this time is the voter apathy. Earlier, people would go in large numbers to vote. This time around, the voting percentages have fallen. People say it's because of summer, but those who've been on the ground, they say it's also because of apathy. And this apathy is because people are no longer enamored of Modi as they used to be earlier.
So we've talked about Narendra Modi at length, and certainly he is a dominant player in Indian politics. But who are some of the other main characters in this election that we should watch out for, both from the government and also from the opposition alliance?
In this election, in the BJP, no candidate matters. Modi is the candidate. The identity of individual candidates is immaterial because he's asking for votes in his name, on his record. So in BJP, the only person to watch for is Modi. And the people we need to watch out for in the opposition are Rahul Gandhi of the Congress, Mallikarjun Kharge, who is the Congress president, Mamata Banerjee, a formidable figure and Chief Minister of West Bengal, who is taking on Modi in a big way, Sharad Pawar, again, a major figure in Maharashtra, Akhilesh Yadav of the Samajwadi Party or the Socialist Party in Uttar Pradesh. So these are the major opposition figures, and it's what they say matters in this election.
Now, as you know only too well, Bharat, there can sometimes be quite a stark difference between the issues that politicians want to focus on and what voters actually care about. So can you give us a sense of the major issues people on the street are talking about? How do they feel about the way the country is headed in 2024?
Income disparities in India has become a major issue in this election. Independent statistical analysis shows that 1% of Indians own 40% of its wealth. What Rahul Gandhi has been saying is that the wealth that Mr. Modi has distributed, he said he will give it back to the people in the form of policies and job guarantee schemes.
If we look at an election map of India among the two colours of the major coalitions, you've got the orange of the BJP that dominates the north, and then less so the further south. So how much of a role does geography play? Is it significant?
The north-south divide exists in the minds of only psephologists and election analysts. BJP has not been able to make inroads into South India. BJP has only 29 out of 129 seats in the outgoing parliament in South India. And chances are that this number will go down. Now, the difference, if any, is something which India used to celebrate, which is the difference in language, difference in culture, and most importantly, the federal nature of Indian state. There have been several futile attempts to suggest that Hindi should be the national language, that it, somehow sort of it is elevated over all other Indian languages, that North Indian culture, that is superior to what the South Indians do. And this, the South Indian states, as well as some other states in the North and Northeast, reject.
Elections, they're not just a window into national politics, are they? They're also a great way to see where a country's at in all parts of life. So where do you think India is on its story from a post-colonial republic to what some believe is its place as a global superpower?
For India to be a superpower, first of all, it has to be a power in its immediate neighborhood. You look at our relationship with our neighbors. With Pakistan, we don't even have an ambassador, a high commissioner there. The diplomatic presence has been cut down by more than 50%. Do the Bangladeshis like India? Well, Sheikh Hasina likes India, but Bangladeshi people perhaps don't. Maldives certainly doesn't like us. Nepal accuses us of interfering in their internal affairs. So if you don't have acceptance in your immediate neighborhood, how on earth do you expect that people elsewhere will accept you as their great power? You don't take a stand on Ukraine. You don't take a stand on Gaza. In fact, initially our Prime Minister welcomed the attack on Gaza. Only later on, the Foreign Office backtracked. So I'm saying with these kind of aberrations in your perspective of the world, I think it's over-ambitious to think that suddenly the world will say India is a great power. India will reach there once our economy grows, once we mature as a democracy, once we become more secular, more tolerant. Only then can we say, okay, we have a voice not only in the region, but we also have a voice in the world. But before that, it's all pretension.
South Asian editor Bharat Bhushan, it's certainly going to be a fascinating contest. Thank you so much for helping us understand what's happening on the ground in India. Bharat will be back with us next time as we discuss the role religion is set to play in the election and what that means for the future of India's secular constitution. For in-depth coverage of India's elections, head to 360info.org. You can sign up for our newsletters and Newswire for journalists and understand our work to fight against misinformation with university experts worldwide. I'm your host, Emma Hoy. We'll see you next time on Leave It to the Experts.